Imagine waking up each morning telling yourself you're living with purpose, yet deep down, a quiet tension gnaws at you. You know you should speak truthfully, act with courage, treat your body with respect, but you scroll endlessly, snap at loved ones, chase distractions, and then convince yourself it's fine. Everyone does it, you say. It's just one day. That inner friction isn't random. It's your mind screaming that something is out of alignment. You're lying to yourself every single day, and those lies keep you trapped in a life smaller than the one you're capable of. If you've ever felt that quiet discomfort when your actions don't match what you claim to value, stay with me. This is about facing it head on, the Stoic way. If this resonates even a little, hit that like button right now. It helps the message reach others who need it, and subscribe with notifications on so you never miss a reminder to live with clarity and strength. Number 1. Understanding cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is not some fancy psychology term reserved for textbooks. It is the painful tension that arises whenever what you believe to be true clashes violently with what you actually do. The Stoics never called it cognitive dissonance, but they described it perfectly again and again. Epictetus said we are disturbed not by things themselves, but by the opinions we form about them. When your reasoned opinion tells you courage, self-control, justice, and wisdom are the only goods worth pursuing, yet you spend hours seeking likes, avoiding hard conversations, numbing discomfort with food or screens, your soul feels torn in two. That tear is dissonance. And because the mind desperately craves internal peace, it almost always chooses the easier path. Instead of changing the cowardly or lazy behavior, it quietly adjusts the belief. It's not really that important. Everyone else does it. I'm only human. In that moment, you have lied to yourself, and the lie buys you temporary calm at the terrible price of integrity. This inner conflict is constant because modern life bombards us with temptations designed to exploit it. Algorithms feed us instant gratification exactly when our higher judgment says wait. Advertisements whisper that happiness lies in possessions, while Stoicism insists true happiness lies only in a well-ordered mind. Every time you give in, a small fracture forms. You feel it as vague guilt, low-grade anxiety, that Sunday night dread, even when nothing dramatic happened. Most people spend years papering over those fractures with distractions, never realizing the structure is slowly collapsing from within. Marcus Aurelius understood this intimately. He wrote entire pages in his private journal, simply reminding himself not to be deceived by first impressions, to question every urge before acting on it. The tragedy is that the mind is astonishingly good at self-deception. It invents elaborate stories to protect the ego from shame. Psychologists later called these mechanisms defense mechanisms. The Stoics simply called them passions out of control. When passion, fear, desire, anger overrides reason, the rational part of you knows something is wrong, but the passionate part fights to stay in charge. The result is a civil war inside your skull that you lose every day you refuse to face it. Seneca compared the soul to a house with bad foundations. If you keep adding beautiful decorations while ignoring the cracks, eventually the whole building falls. Cognitive dissonance is the crack detector. It beeps every time your life drifts from your principles. The Stoic response is not to eliminate the discomfort. That's impossible. But to lean into it. When you feel that inner friction, treat it as valuable information, not an enemy. Pause. Ask 3 simple questions Epictetus would approve. What exactly am I telling myself right now? Is that judgment in accordance with nature and reason? What action would align my behavior with my deepest values? Answering honestly usually hurts for a moment, but that pain is the price of freedom. Every time you choose truth over comfort, the fracture begins to heal. Over months and years, this practice transforms you. The dissonance that once paralyzed you becomes a compass. You stop being surprised by your own weakness because you no longer hide it. You develop what Marcus called the art of living, the ability to see clearly, act deliberately, and accept reality without excuses. The mind quiets, not because the world becomes easier, but because you no longer fight yourself. In the end, understanding cognitive dissonance means recognizing that almost every moment of unease you feel is self-inflicted, not by external events, but by the stories you tell yourself to avoid hard change. The moment you stop telling those stories, the war inside begins to end. Peace is not the absence of tension. It is the presence of alignment. Number 2, the lies you tell without noticing. Procrastination is perhaps the clearest daily demonstration of self-lying. You genuinely value growth, contribution, self-respect. Yet when the moment comes to write the report, train, study, or have the difficult conversation, you open social media instead. Then comes the lie. I need to recharge first. I'll be more focused later. This isn't the right time. Deep down, a part of you knows these are excuses born of fear. Fear of failure, fear of effort, fear of boredom. The dissonance shows up as tightness in your stomach, racing thoughts, that nagging sense you're letting yourself down. Instead of acting, you soothe the discomfort with more distraction, deepening the cycle. Marcus Aurelius fought this every morning by literally commanding himself to get up. At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work as a human being. He refused to negotiate with the lying part of his mind. In personal relationships, the lies grow more sophisticated. You believe you're kind, patient, loving. Yet when your partner or child frustrates you, the tone sharpens, sarcasm slips out, silence becomes a weapon. Afterward, you tell yourself, they pushed me too far, I was just being real, I apologize, so it's fine. Epictetus would interrupt here. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. The irritation was yours to manage. Blaming the other person preserves the illusion that you are virtuous while allowing unvirtuous behavior. Over years, these small lies erode trust. First, your trust in yourself, then the trust others place in you. Health offers perhaps the most relentless examples. You know, disciplined eating and movement create energy, clarity, longevity. Yet you skip the gym because it's raining, eat the extra slice because it's a special day, stay up late because one night won't hurt. Each time, the body sends signals: sluggishness, brain fog, low mood, but the mind counters with rationalization. I'll start Monday, balance is important, I deserve this. Seneca warned that small, repeated indulgences are more dangerous than occasional large ones because they normalize weakness. The dissonance compounds quietly until one day you look in the mirror and barely recognize the person you promised to become. Even seemingly trivial habits reveal the pattern. You claim to value presence and deep connection, yet family dinner becomes everyone staring at phones. You tell yourself, it's just while we eat, but the unease lingers because part of you knows attention is the currency of love and you're spending it elsewhere. Or you say wisdom and learning matter, yet you consume endless shallow content while books gather dust. The mind whispers, I'm staying informed, but the tension reveals avoidance of real effort. Social media is a magnifying glass for these contradictions. You desire inner tranquility, yet refresh feeds compulsively, measuring your worth by numbers. You insist it doesn't affect me, but envy, comparison, and restlessness prove otherwise. The Stoic antidote is voluntary simplicity, periods of deliberate disconnection to remember what peace actually feels like without external validation. The common thread in every example is speed. We spot the lie instantly when someone else tells it, but we grant ourselves endless charity. The wise person reverses this habit. They become mercilessly honest with their own motives first. Naming the lie does not make it disappear immediately, but it strips away much of its power. Each honest naming is a small victory in a long campaign to live without self-betrayal. Number 3, why we cling to the lies. The human mind hates psychological discomfort more than almost anything else. When dissonance appears, the easiest way to remove it is not to change behavior. That requires effort and risk, but to change the belief or reinterpret the situation so the contradiction vanishes. This is why people stay in toxic jobs, bad relationships, destructive habits for years. Admitting, "I've been wrong," feels like annihilation of identity. Rationalizing, "It's not so bad," feels like survival. Pride, one of the greatest enemies the Stoics named, makes us defend mistakes rather than correct them. Rationalization is the mind's favorite weapon. It produces an endless supply of plausible-sounding stories. I'm not lazy, I'm strategic. I'm not selfish, I'm protecting my energy. I'm not addicted, I just enjoy it. These stories reduce immediate pain, but increase long-term suffering because they block learning. Marcus Aurelius combated this daily by writing blunt reminders to himself. Stop wandering about. You have no time left to read your diaries, to prance about on the stage of life. He knew the seductive power of self-justification and refused to let it win. Another powerful force is sunk cost. You've invested years, money, identity in a path. Even if it's the wrong one, abandoning it feels like throwing everything away. But Seneca's logic is ruthless. The true cost is not cutting your losses. The true cost is continuing to throw good life after bad. Every day you persist in error compounds the waste. Better to feel the short, sharp pain of honest admission than the slow bleed of pretense. Social conformity adds another layer. Humans are tribal creatures. When the group normalizes behavior that contradicts your values, endless scrolling, gossip, materialism, complaining, you face pressure to join in or be ostracized. So you join, then lie to yourself that you're still different inside. The Stoic chooses solitude over false belonging when necessary. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Fear of the unknown is perhaps the deepest anchor. Change means uncertainty. Leaving a comfortable but misaligned life means facing new discomforts, financial risk, loneliness, failure, effort. Lying to yourself keeps the devil you know. But Epictetus reminds us, the only safe harbor is within. External security is illusion. Internal alignment is the only true safety. Finally, habit itself becomes a tyrant. After thousands of repetitions, lying to yourself becomes automatic. The mind defaults to comfort-seeking narratives without conscious effort. Breaking free requires deliberate, repetitive counterpractice. Morning premeditation, evening review, voluntary discomfort, constant questioning of impressions. Only through daily discipline can the automatic lie be replaced with automatic truth. Number 4, the Stoic way to face and overcome dissonance. Stoicism does not try to remove dissonance. It treats it as a helpful alarm system. The moment you feel inner conflict, you know a judgment is false or an action is out of alignment. Instead of escaping the feeling through distraction, numbing, or justification, lean in. Epictetus gave the exact protocol. When any impression arises, examine it before giving assent. Ask, is this under my control? Is it true? Does acting on it lead toward virtue or away from it? Answering these questions honestly dissolves most lies on the spot. Daily reflection becomes non-negotiable. Every evening, sit quietly and review. Where did I act against my principles today? What fear or desire overpowered reason? What story did I tell myself to justify it? Write it down without self-pity or self-praise. Marcus Aurelius did exactly this in his meditations, not for an audience, but to keep his own soul honest. Over time, this habit turns self-examination from painful to natural. Sometimes behavior must change before belief fully aligns. Seneca advised acting as if you already possess the virtue. Want courage? Do the courageous thing even while afraid. Want temperance? Practice restraint even when craving is loud. Each action taken against the grain weakens the old neural pathways of excuse and strengthens new ones of integrity. The dissonance shrinks because you're no longer living a double life. Focus ruthlessly on your own domain. You cannot control outcomes, other people's reactions, luck, or fate. You can control judgment, intention, effort. When you limit attention to what is yours, much of the pressure that fuels rationalization disappears. You stop needing to lie to protect an image because the only image that matters is the one you see when you look inward. Voluntary discomfort is one of the most powerful tools. Intentionally skip a meal, take a cold shower, walk instead of driving, say no to easy pleasures. These small acts prove to yourself that you can align behavior with value even when it hurts. Each successful act shrinks the territory where lies can hide. You build what Epictetus called the discipline of assent, desire, and action. Finally, cultivate radical indifference to externals. Wealth, status, approval, comfort. When your worth no longer depends on things outside your control, lying loses its purpose. You no longer need to pretend because there is nothing left to protect except your own reason and virtue. This is the state the Stoics called ataraxia, untroubled freedom. Number 5, living without the lies. When self-deception ends, an extraordinary simplicity arrives. Decisions become cleaner because they flow from clear principles instead of tangled rationalizations. Energy once wasted on inner conflict is freed for creation, connection, service. You wake up and know exactly who you are choosing to be that day. No negotiation required. Relationships transform. Without the need to preserve a false self-image, you can listen without defensiveness, speak without pretense, apologize without excuses. Others feel the shift even if they can't name it. This person is solid, present, trustworthy. Trust compounds. Love deepens. Conflict still arises, but it is met with clarity instead of blame. Your body thanks you. When excuses no longer rule, eating, movement, rest, vitality returns. Fatigue lifts. Resilience grows. You stop treating the body like an amusement park and start treating it like the vehicle of a rational soul. Discipline stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like respect. Purpose sharpens into focus. Without the fog of daily lies, you see clearly what matters, becoming wiser, more just, more courageous, more temperate, helping others without expecting reward, accepting what comes with equanimity. Ambition shifts from external markers to internal mastery. Hardship loses much of its terror. Challenges become training grounds rather than threats to identity. You no longer need life to be comfortable to feel worthwhile. The Stoic calm Seneca described emerges, the ability to meet any event with an undisturbed mind because your inner citadel remains intact. In the end, freedom from self-lying is the freedom the Stoics promised all along. You're no longer at war with yourself. You live in accordance with nature, reason ruling impulse, virtue guiding action, truth as your constant companion. The daily tension that once weakened you now serves you. Every moment becomes an opportunity to practice integrity. And in that unbroken practice lies a life the ancients called good. Not easy, not painless, but deeply worth living. Number 6, what unresolved dissonance steals from you. Unchecked cognitive dissonance does not stay quiet. It compounds like interest on a debt you pretend doesn't exist. At first it's mild, a vague restlessness, a sense that life feels heavier than it should. Over time, that weight settles into chronic fatigue, not from physical labor, but from the constant mental gymnastics required to maintain the lies. You expend enormous energy defending a version of yourself that doesn't match reality. Seneca described how vice creeps in disguised as virtue. The same happens here. The lies you tell to reduce tension slowly drain your vitality until you wake up one day wondering why nothing excites you anymore, why motivation feels like a distant memory. Relationships suffer deeply. When your actions contradict your professed values, others sense the inconsistency even if they can't name it. You become less reliable, less present, more prone to defensiveness or withdrawal. Trust erodes, not dramatically in one fight, but gradually through small hypocrisies. Epictetus warned that we harm ourselves first when we act against reason. The harm spreads outward. Partners, friends, children absorb the fallout. Mixed signals, broken promises justified away. Emotional distance masked as being busy. The dissonance that began inside you creates distance outside you. Your sense of agency shrinks. Every time you choose comfort over truth, you reinforce the belief that you are not fully in control of yourself. You start seeing yourself as a victim of circumstances. I can't help it. It's just how I am. Even though Stoicism insists the opposite, only your judgments are yours. This learned helplessness feeds more dissonance, creating a vicious cycle. Marcus Aurelius fought this daily by reminding himself that he could always choose a better opinion. Without that fight, you hand power to impulses, then lie about why you did. Physical health pays a price too. The stress of inner conflict manifests as tension headaches, poor sleep, weakened immunity, digestive issues, subtle but persistent signals from the body that harmony is missing. You rationalize these away. It's just aging, work is stressful, but the root is misalignment. Seneca noted that the soul in disorder torments the body. Modern science confirms chronic cognitive dissonance correlates with elevated cortisol and inflammation. Creativity and purpose wither. When part of your mind is occupied defending falsehoods, less bandwidth remains for deep thought, innovation, or meaningful contribution. You settle for shallow pursuits because they require less confrontation with truth. The grander visions you once held fade into someday excuses. The Stoics saw eudaimonia, flourishing, as impossible without internal consistency. Dissonance blocks the path. Ultimately, the greatest theft is time. Years slip by in a half-lived state, defending an illusion instead of building a real life. The regret that comes later, when the lies can no longer hold, is profound. But the Stoic path offers reversal at any moment. Face the cost honestly, and the energy once wasted on deception returns multiplied for what truly matters. Number 7. Sharpening your inner vigilance. Detection begins with prosoke, constant attention to the ruling faculty, as Epictetus taught. This is not casual self-awareness, but vigilant watchfulness, like a guard at the city gates examining every entrant. When an impression arises, this shortcut is fine. They deserve my anger. Pause before assenting. Ask, what belief does this rest on? Does it align with virtue? Train yourself to catch the moment the lie forms, before it solidifies into habit. Journaling becomes your daily tribunal. Marcus Aurelius used his meditations not for poetry, but for interrogation. Each evening, record dissonant moments without mercy or flattery. Today I delayed because of fear, then called it strategy. Over weeks, patterns emerge. Recurring excuses, favorite rationalizations. Seeing them written strips their mystery and power. The written word makes the invisible visible. Repetition makes correction possible. Use the view from above technique. Imagine your life from high above, or from another's perspective, or from your deathbed. This distance reveals contradictions clearly. The petty argument you justified looks trivial. The necessary indulgence looks wasteful. Epictetus advised viewing impressions as if happening to someone else to judge impartially. Apply it inward. Would I accept this excuse from friend? Practice premeditatio malorum, not just for externals, but for internal traps. Anticipate moments of likely dissonance, tired evenings, stressful meetings, social temptations, and decide in advance how you will respond. When the moment arrives, the predecision acts as an anchor against impulse. Seneca prepared for adversity this way. Extend it to self-deception. Seek external mirrors cautiously. Ask trusted friends for honest feedback, but only after building your own vigilance. Their observations can highlight blind spots, but rely primarily on your reason. Epictetus warned against depending on others' opinions, yet acknowledged wise counsel as a tool. Make discomfort your ally. When tension arises, don't numb it. Sit with it, name it, trace its source. The longer you tolerate the feeling without rationalizing, the clearer the truth becomes. This tolerance builds like muscle. Over time, detection shifts from effortful to instinctive. Lies lose their stealth. Number 8, rebuilding after the lies. Admit the damage without despair. Seneca said we should correct faults as soon as we see them, not punish ourselves eternally. Acknowledge where you've lied, to whom, and how long, then release shame. Shame keeps dissonance alive. Honest admission begins healing. Recommit to core principles daily. Write your values, virtue as the sole good, control over judgments alone, and read them morning and night. Marcus used reminders to realign. Do the same. Each reaffirmation narrows the gap between belief and action. Start small with corrective actions. Choose one area of dissonance, procrastination, temper, indulgence, and act contrary to the old pattern for a week. Small wins rebuild trust in yourself. Epictetus taught progress through consistent practice, not sudden perfection. Forgive but do not excuse. Understand the fear or habit that fueled the lie. Learn its lesson, then move forward. Self-compassion without leniency prevents relapse. The Stoic forgives to free energy for virtue, not to indulge weakness. Rebuild habits around transparency. Share your commitments publicly when appropriate, or keep an accountability journal. External visibility discourages hidden rationalizations. Live as if your actions are witnessed, not by others, but by your highest self. Celebrate alignment, not just results. Praise yourself for moments of honesty, even when outcomes are imperfect. This reinforces the new pattern. Over months, the rebuilt self feels more natural than the old divided one. Number 9, long-term transformation. Consistent practice fuses belief and action into unity. What once required effort becomes second nature. Marcus described the sage as never needing to force virtue. It flows. You approach that state, not perfection, but increasing congruence. Character strengthens like tempered steel. Each confrontation with dissonance forges resilience. Temptations lose pull because the mind no longer entertains false impressions. Epictetus said freedom is living without hindrance from within. Purpose clarifies. Without inner conflict clouding vision, you pursue what aligns with nature. Wisdom, justice, courage, temperance without distraction. Life gains direction. Days feel intentional. Inner peace deepens. The absence of self-betrayal creates ataraxia, tranquility untroubled by regret or excuse. Seneca called this the greatest riches. It cannot be taken away. Influence on others grows naturally. Your integrity becomes quiet testimony. People sense the alignment and are drawn to it, not through preaching but example. Legacy forms. Years of living without lies leave a life worth remembering, one of steady growth, not hidden fractures. The Stoic measures success by character, not circumstance. This path delivers both. Number 10, the ultimate freedom. Freedom from self-deception is the Stoic ideal realized. You no longer war against yourself. Reason rules unchallenged. Epictetus defined freedom as self-mastery, Exactly this. Every event becomes opportunity. Challenges test alignment. Ease reveals discipline. No situation forces lies, because truth is your default. Joy arises from harmony. Pleasure follows virtue naturally, without chasing or regret. Marcus found contentment in simple acceptance. You do too. Death loses terror. When life matches principle, endings hold no unfinished business. You face mortality calmly, having lived honestly. Connection to the whole strengthens. Living rationally aligns you with universal nature. Isolation from self-deception brings unity with cosmos. This is eudaimonia, the flourishing the Stoics promised. Not endless happiness, but a life free of self-inflicted suffering, rich in meaning, grounded in truth. The daily lies end, daily virtue endures. This is the reward for facing dissonance without flinching.